Go ahead and get started. 11:02. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, whether you're on the East Coast spending your lunch hour with us, whether you're on the West Coast enjoying breakfast or anywhere in between. We appreciate you spending the time with us. My name is Taylor Greiner. I'm the Director of Innovation here at US Signal, leading new product and R&D, joined by Ryan McDonald. Ryan, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, solutions architect. I live and breathe Microsoft these days. My joke is I love Microsoft. Don't quite drink the Kool-Aid. Here to help.
We just want to make sure people understand what they're getting into. It's a big, deep blue ocean. There's a lot in that landscape. So this is a topic we're excited about. Like I had said, a lot of people are very interested in this. We've got some slides. We don't want to PowerPoint you to death. So we'll kind of walk through that just to set the, kind of set the scene for Azure Local. And then Ryan's got a bunch of demos to walk through different ways to work with Azure Local, VMs, AVD. Did you get Kubernetes?
Just a little bit. Full disclosure, I'm not a Kubernetes expert by any means, so I'm sure some folks on here will be able to take and run with it. But just to give you an understanding of the foundation of it all and how
you can at least run, was it kube control commands?
Yeah.
And so we love for these to be interactive. So if you do have questions, please post in the questions. I will do my best to watch as those come in. We've got Diane from our marketing team that is helping watch those. We want to make sure we get those answered. So enough rambling from me. We'll go ahead and get started. So I've got 1,000 windows up. Let me see if I can easily switch this. There we go. All right. So Ryan, just to really kind of set the stage, can you talk through what even is Azure Local?
Yeah. So historically, you may have known Azure Local as Azure Stack HCI. Microsoft loves their name changes, and I'll be honest, this was probably one that actually made sense. There was Azure Stack, and then there was Azure Stack HCI, and just kind of the misunderstanding between the two there, where Azure Local, it is, imagine you have your VMs in Azure today. They're in the cloud. They're running on their own servers, their own networking, their own storage. Whereas Azure Local, those three pieces there are running on your environment and your data center. It's all staying local there. You'd be able to have that failovering, and again, back to keeping your data, your traffic, all within your rack.
Yeah, and just to add on to this, this is a conversation that we're hearing a ton, right? One of the CIO reports, I know there's a lot out there, but one of them had estimated over 80% of enterprises are actually looking at repatriating stuff out of the hyperscaler clouds, right? And with that level of exodus, they're not doing complete moves, right? It's more like right workload, right place. Maybe you're manufacturing, you need stuff on prem, things like that. Microsoft really looked at that and said, hey, instead of losing that and those workloads moving elsewhere, we can use Azure Local so that they can continue to drive from the same Azure portal that we know and love, but work with hardware that is on-prem. So it's edge sites.
Yep. By no means are we saying completely bring your whole data center back in, but there are definitely some use cases there that make the most sense. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll just we've got a better view of it here.
Yeah.
So within the architecture itself, really making sure to understand where that management plane ends, where your rack begins. So things that are still going to be in Azure are your resource manager, Entra ID, any Defender policies, doing any monitoring, log analytics, and then the Azure policies themselves. So those are the items that you're not going to have to worry about HAing or things like that. The only traffic going in between the two is that control and telemetry. So you've got your Azure Local OS, you've got your disks, your AVD session host, Kubernetes, everything can still be local in your data center. Go ahead and go to the next one there.
Shared responsibility model.
Yeah, just kind of, again, similar slide to before, but just understanding that what you own and what Microsoft owns. You still have that SLA in place for those pieces there, but remembering when it comes to backup, data protection, any capacity planning, Microsoft, they shoot for people to have N+1 on these machines. So that all, again, is back to you. A cluster, you'll see here in the demo, we've got our 2 different hosts. While they do have HA, that's not really considered disaster recovery. So there's still some planning to be involved there and understanding those pieces.
All right. So ultimately, 3 components that you need to make this work. You need your Arc-enabled machines. This is what's going to allow us to communicate back to Azure. We need that resource bridge, and then the location of where we want to run these things. And as we have there, functionally, it's a private Azure region.
Yep. So you're dropped down now, rather than seeing East US 2, you would actually see your custom location there to be able to deploy your resources.
Perfect. What about workloads that, reframe. So we kind of hit on it, right? But the right workloads that we would want in this environment, stuff that we're not going to move up to the cloud. Manufacturing is a big one, right? So do we have production lines that we cannot tolerate, network disconnections? We all know in the manufacturing world, downtime is dollar. I mean, that's anywhere, right? We should know our cost, to be down, but it seems very prevalent there. Patient, citizen data, a lot of stuff that maybe has compliance reasons to stay on-prem. Retail organizations that need point of sales to stay up, even if there is a disconnection. Things like that. These are all great use cases for why you may run this. I'd be curious, if you have a workload or a scenario that you need to keep these things on-prem. I always love to build out my list of talking points. So if anybody's happy to share, we would love to hear that. But Ryan, anything else that you want to add to, why Azure Local is great for, workloads that we don't want to move to the hyperscalers?
Yeah, I think
the hyperscalers up into the cloud.
Yep. One big piece there is just being able to, I hate this phrase, but I got to figure out something else, that single pane of glass. So you do have stuff that has to stay local, but you have a lot in Azure, let's say, or you just understand Azure a little bit more. Being able to have all of that management in the one section, rather than, okay, well, we're on-prem here, I've got to get into VMware or another hypervisor there. And then the other piece there, I know you brought up manufacturing. So when it comes to manufacturing, sometimes internet access, things like that can be a little dicey, or don't have to keep it off the network and things like that. Within Azure Local, as long as it can see Azure once every 30 days, things will continue to work. East-west traffic will continue. So just one thing to call out there.
Perfect. All right. How do we get started? How do we build a cluster?
Yeah. So kind of Microsoft's goal with Azure Local was to take a lot of the deployment out of your hands. So we'll see in a couple slides here later, but they've got 2 different solutions, your premier solution or integrated solution. The goal here is once these devices show up on your doorstep, you're going to be able to get those plugged in, and they're already talking to Azure. The clusters are already built. They're already ready to go. We've got the security baselines, any application control policies that you have in place, they're up and ready. Utilizing Azure Resource Manager, it's all of those bicep controls. So when we go to make that deployment, everything's already preset. If we need to make a new change or push out a third server, it's just a few clicks of a buttons. In Azure, it's not loading the USB on an OS and things like that.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And you had hit on Premier versus integrated. Can you kind of talk through that more?
Yeah, yeah. So the Premier solutions, this is where Microsoft and the OEM partners are working hand in hand together in the back end in the labs, making sure that when they're pushing out these updates, that it is all coming through their, they call them solution builder extensions. You'll hear them reference a lot as SBEs, but not only is it the OS update, but they're pushing out firmware updates, drivers, BIOS updates, things like that. That is all managed in kind of a lifecycle management on the Premier solution. From the integrated solution, while they still push out these updates, you're going to get the validated and driver packages there. That only happens about 2 to 4 times a year, whereas with the Premier solution, that's happening continually. So Microsoft's, and honestly, a little bit of my suggestion anymore is if we can get down the Premier solution path, that is the way to go.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that integrated systems don't work, but just a little bit more risk there to be had. The one thing I did want to call out here too, if you've been following Azure Local the last year or so, probably wondering why isn't there the third option. So Microsoft used to have a third option called validated nodes. So you would still get your Azure Local updates for the OS, but everything else would have to be manually done on your end. Microsoft in the last few months has actually removed any validated nodes. I would say I've seen about 60% of those what were validated nodes have moved into integrated system. Again, I have no proof of this or anything, but I truly believe the HPs, the Dells, the Data Ons, they're all working as hard as they possibly can to just get everything under Premier solution. So in my opinion, I do see somewhere in the future where we won't even see these two separated. It'll just be Azure Local, everything under Premier solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when we go into the demo, we'll kind of walk through. I know, Ryan, you've got the kind of the website where you can see the catalog of Premier Solution, integrated system.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So a few different ways that we can lay out a cluster. Let's talk through those.
Yeah. So historically, Azure Local was only hyperconverged machines. So compute, storage, everything within one box. The last year now, they have offered up a few separate solutions there. So we've got hyperconverged with external storage. So you've got your node there, and then maybe connecting to a SAN network. And then your traditional 3-tier with disaggregated. Still some hardware requirements there as well, but Microsoft understood that not everybody can go hyperconverged. There are certain situations where that's needed. So we've seen that quickly come down the road here with disaggregated. And then one thing to note here as well, you from a storage switch perspective, you can have your two nodes just talking directly east-west traffic to each other without needing that top of rack storage switch as well.
Perfect. All right. So one of the questions that always comes up is cost, right, with Azure Local. Let's kind of lay the groundwork for what budget-wise do we need to take into consideration as we're building these out?
Yeah. Obviously, when it comes to if you're comparing to going to Azure or keeping your stuff on Prem, it's that CapEx, OpEx understanding. So you will be paying for hardware. Obviously, going to be your biggest cost there.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to your Windows licensing, for the Windows guests, if you can get Windows Server Data Center going with software assurance, that's going to be your best bang for your buck. Your servers that are already licensed today, bringing those in basically waives that platform fee for your physical cores per month. So that you don't have the Windows Server Data Center with software assurance, every physical core will be $10 per month, whether they're on or not. That's just what they have there. But the Azure Hybrid benefit is what's going to waive that platform fee. The other piece to understand here is there's still going to be services that if you're utilizing Azure services on the back end, that even though the data planes in your data center in Azure, you're still going to be paying some of those ingestion costs and things like that.
Yeah.
Big one would just be Azure Monitor doing the log analytics, Defender for servers, Azure Backup, Azure Site Recovery, and then another one to understand is AVD. The AVD instruments in the back end, there's just a lot more going on. There's still going to be a cost there for AVD, but you're not paying for storage, network, everything local there.
Yep, makes sense. Perfect.
The last piece there is I just talked about with the disaggregated. So if you weren't fully hyperconverged and you're trying to have external storage or typical 3-tier, basically you're looking at about double the cost there for the physical core. I think Microsoft their goal would be to keep everybody hyperconverged, but just trying to make sure there's options for other folks there.
Perfect. All right. When it fits, when it does not. And I think we got 2 more slides after this, and then we get into the fun part. So
yeah,
Ryan, I know we've kind of hit on this a bunch, but anything more we want to share on, Azure Local versus not?
Yeah. Besides what we've already kind of called out, just really making sure that, and I forgot to mention this before, there is a 60-day trial out there. You'll see in my demo here, even that if you, like, I don't know if I want to even buy the hardware, I just want to see it in the interface. There's some solutions that you can push out with Azure and keep it all still within Azure, but still test the functionality there.
Yeah, which is how we're going to show it here as well, just so people are there.
Yep. And then the only other piece would be trying to move to something like this, unless you already have hardware that is validated, and you're not ready for that upfront cost, that would probably not be the play there.
Yeah. And that's, I think everyone's kind of aware of the hardware state of the world right now with skyrocketing prices. It's an investment to get started in this. Just full warning, but if you have the CapEx budget for it or the use case, really is a very good solution. So, okay. So we've talked about VMs. Kind of give a quick summary of what services can we run on Azure Local, and then we'll dive into the demo.
Yep. So I kind of touched on it earlier, but Azure Kubernetes is able to run locally on your Azure Local. There also is AVD, being able to keep those session hosts on Prem. Usually some folks can be scared of AVD because it's those session hosts just living in Azure, and maybe you've got some data locality issues there. I've seen one of the bigger adoption cases when it comes to Azure Local. SQL Managed Instance, another similar piece there. Being able to have that just local in your data center, not having to worry about it in Azure and some of the costs related there. So, and then all things AI, right?
We made it 20 minutes without saying the word, so
that's pretty good. I'll take that. Being able to do your GPU pass through on your hardware there as well. So
perfect. All right, and then what we are going to show.
Yeah. So today, couldn't quite get hardware figured out in time. So we have what is called, and this is Microsoft driven, Microsoft written on their site. So I'll send a link out so everybody, if you're wanting to test this out, but it's called Jumpstart Local Box. So kind of doing a comparison here, I've got an Azure VM that's got 2 nested Hyper-V guests on it. Those Hyper-V guests are acting as your physical servers on premise. Storage wise, I've just got some virtual disks. Storage would be comparatively to your local hardware. Again, networking, it's all within Azure. On Prem, it would be your top of rack switches, your storage networks.
Yeah. Yeah, but this will show the experience of what it's like to work with Azure Local. So that's really what we're wanting to show here. I think it is demo time.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Diane, are you able to make Ryan presenter so that he can share? And if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to throw those into the chat. We've got eyes on there. Happy to answer those as well. So, all right, Ryan, all you.
Make sure everybody can see.
Yep.
And I meant to do this. Try to zoom in a little bit for everybody.
Perfect. I think you're good.
All righty. So I've got my lab environment here on my subscription in Azure, and hopping right in, I have my resource group, and here has everything that was created with the local box. But I've got a couple AVD machines, but just to point out here, these two hosts are my acting as my physical hosts here. Before I jump into there, a couple more things wanted to call out. So we mentioned before, we've got a custom location that is acting as your region. So I've got my Jumpstart location here. And then, sorry, I'm not too used to working at 200%. Here we go. We've got our resource bridge here acting as that communicator from your local, from your Azure local into Azure itself. So hopping into the Azure Local cluster. So you've booted up your two devices. It's going to show your Azure Local cluster here. Get a little bit of overview. Push that over there. So we've got it added to our Active Directory. You're going to be able to see some Defender for Cloud pieces here, some alerts. Biggest thing remembering here is it's very similar to, I mean, if you know Azure, you're going to know Azure Local. Being able to just, a lot of the management is very similar. You can see our two machines here, and our workloads have a couple different virtual machines, Kubernetes, and then our updates. One other piece, if you're working with Azure, you'll understand extensions. So you might find yourself on getting AVD going. There's some extensions needing to add there, but you have those all listed out. Getting into the machines. So we got our two connected. You can see the serial numbers, number of cores, what OS version, the OS build. And then, so we'll hop into one here. Very similar, get all your same information pieces there. Being able to see all the different properties, agent status, things like that, and our networking here. One thing to call out here, so you will see your storage networking and also your just LAN networking as well. From there, we'll hop back. Okay, so we've got Azure Local stood up now, and we want to go build a VM. Somewhat similarly to Azure, we've got our virtual machines here, and I want to create a VM.
Very familiar process.
Yep. So I've got my resource group. Too many resource groups.
You got a lot. That's all right.
And we'll do LinkedIn. And security type, very similar to what you're used to with just building out. One thing to call out with storage path. So doing this automatically, it's going to set up that high availability between the two hosts. Maybe find yourself in a scenario where we want to make sure that's just on one of the hosts. You do have that capability here with manual. Just for our test here today, we'll keep that as automatic. And then we have our Azure Marketplace images. Now, you can take them directly from Azure. I've got two that I've already downloaded here. But if we go look here, if you have your Azure custom image stored in an Azure storage account, or you have it on a local share, you can bring those directly into your Azure local environment, be able to push the images out there. For now, I'm just going to do a Windows 11 machine here. You can set your processor count, memory, whether you want your memory type static or dynamic, kind of that thin provision, thick provision. And then our GPU, if anybody's trying to do some local models, things like that. Guest management, always recommend to have this on. Anytime you need to run any governance or Azure Update Manager or things like that, keeping that on there. VM proxy configuration here, just understanding that if in your internal network, if you need to get out to Microsoft.com, you need to be able to get out to Azure. If you're sending that through a proxy, there's a little bit more setup there to be able to get the proxy stood up, but majority of folks probably just the public endpoint is fine there. You can set your local account, be able to get in once we get going. I hate these pop-ups.
It's hiding any password that you may be showing.
Yeah, there we go. I was doing it on purpose. And then the other piece here is we can actually join this into a domain. Today is
Ryan, real quick. Your iCloud passwords is still showing up for us. Is it not showing up for you?
It is, and I don't know how to get it to go away.
Tab out, tab in. No. We'll go through this screen and then we'll refresh the page, see if that fixes it.
Yeah. So yeah, you can join this to Active Directory. Today, though, you're not able to join the machine into Entra ID or Entra domain services. They're quickly getting things figured out there. Historically, just even Azure Local itself had to be just Active Directory delivered. Now the Azure Local side of it can be, but joining the VM itself into just Entra is not capable today. You can specify the domain unit, but just for now, I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to try to refresh and see if that goes away.
There you go. That's gone. Once we get through this process, we do have a few questions in the chat, so we'll answer those. Oh, you reset. You got to pick your resource groups and everything again.
Yeah. How can I get away from this?
It's back up. It's never done this before.
Of course.
While you're live in front of an audience, that's when it happens.
Yep. All right, we're gonna have to deal here for a second.
Yeah, let's keep moving.
Yep, from your image, it's gonna already have your OS disk going, but if you needed to attach a separate disk for data or some other storage piece there, you can go ahead and do that here. And then the networking, so already have pre-built the local network. It's very similar to building a network in Azure, just building it, telling it on your custom location. So we'll go ahead and do that here. Can set automatic or DHCP, or automatic or static. And let's do test. Can add multiple NICs if need be. And
great. All right. While that is going,
yeah. Yep.
A couple questions. So I've got a few different. So Travis in the audience asked, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being don't bother, 5 being the easiest process ever, we've got a few scenarios. So the first being, how would you rate the following and why. Greenfield setup of an on-prem environment using Premier or integrated hardware.
And what was the rating again?
1, don't bother doing it. 5, it's the easiest thing ever.
Greenfield environment.
And there's 2 there, right? There's the question related to Premier, and then there would be the question related to integrated.
How easy it is to get it going?
Yeah.
I would give it a 3.9. I would almost give it a 4, but a lot of variables there. How many VMs, that sort of thing. How comfortable you are with Azure in itself. That can be a huge piece. If you've never worked with Azure before, there can be some growing pains there. It's just like anything, if you're getting off VMware and going to VME, or you're going to Hyper-V, if you've never worked with anything like that before, there can be some growing pains there.
For sure.
But the overall process of getting this going, we've seen a lot of great responses of, I honestly couldn't believe it, of they shipped, we got it going, and we were off and running in day 2.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue, because the next question is day 2 operations. Things like keeping software and firmware updated, replacement of hardware if failure happens, adding, removing additional nodes. What does that look like? The customers you're working with, they had easy setup, a month, 2 months, a year down the road. Are they still excited about it?
Yeah. So if we were talking a year ago, I would tell you the updates for Azure Local were a little iffy. There'd be at times where they'd push out the updates and things weren't working as well as they should be. Some of the networking pieces were having some issues, and you'll go out to Reddit, you can go out to all the different community sources out there, and you'll see a lot of people frustrated with this. I've seen Microsoft actually hear that feedback, and the last few updates I've heard a lot of great things when it comes to getting the updates going. Always remembering you're gonna need that N+1, because these updates will ultimately reboot these machines, and they do have high availability. So being able to reboot a machine, now it's N+1 for that node failure, and knowing that if a node were to go down, it's not, okay, the machine never drops. If a node were to go down and you've got VMs on there, it's not, oh, it's already on the other machine. You can boot, they're going to be your storage, the VM itself will be on another machine, but you'll just have to start it up on the other machine itself. So there is a little bit of outage on that perspective if a node were to fail. But if you're doing some maintenance and you need to move the machines, it's all utilizing failover cluster management. So being able to put the host in maintenance mode, move it over, and get it rebooted. So
awesome.
Okay. Hopefully that answered things.
I think so. I think we are good to keep going forward.
Great question. Thank you. Okay, so the VM build itself, I think I clocked it at about 35 minutes. So I'm gonna just let that live there. And a lot of that probably has to do with these hosts living in Azure could probably use a little bit more resources, but
yeah, I don't think we're seeing 35-minute VM build times for customers with this live.
No, no.
Box fun.
Yep. But once the machine's built, I have a couple here, and again, pulling up the VM, it's going to look very similarly to what you're used to working in Azure. So being able to see the agent status, CPU cores, things like that. If you need to connect, whether you're using SSH, one thing to call out here, you might be used to connecting to a machine via Bastion. Bastion would not be available in Azure Local. So just to make sure to call that piece out. I'll show here in a second how we can actually console onto the machine, understanding that Azure Local hosts are just running Hyper-V. So being able to just connect to the host via Hyper-V. Now you can console onto those machines there. So can't quite get away from Hyper-V, but in the big picture, that's all Azure is on the back end is Hyper-V. So
right,
you can manage your disks, things like that, your security pieces there. One thing to call out as well is your Windows updates. So Windows updates are still going to utilize Azure Update Manager, even though that is something running in Azure. There, with your licensing, if you're licensed for Azure Local, you're going to get Azure Update Manager, so there's no added cost there for your updates. But if you're already using Azure Update Manager today, getting away from some of the older pieces, it's day 2 operations, understanding, okay, yep, we've got our update schedules in here. We can bring those into Azure Cloud. Machines can be both in there together. So due to some of my licensing, I can't quite show a demo of Windows Admin Center, but if anybody out there has been testing utilizing Windows Admin Center, same piece here. You can be able to connect, make changes, do things that you typically would with Windows Admin Center on an Azure VM. You can do that with Azure Local as well. Very interested on this best practices assessment. I don't, again, due to my licensing, I don't have a great demo to show today, but if anybody's out there looking at getting that going, definitely let me know. I'm very interested on this piece. So
okay.
Okay.
So that's the virtual machine.
Yep.
Now, again, a number of resources that we can deploy and manage. Ryan, I don't want to steer you in a direction you're not prepared to go. Let's see, AVD or Kubernetes. I know we said we maybe, I know you were working to get those presentable.
Yeah. So Kubernetes, you can get this pushed out. I've got a pre-built Kubernetes cluster here, and basically gonna go build a web page in Kubernetes. So getting this pushed out, we've got our namespace here first. And if you're familiar working with Kubernetes and really love YAML, you can be able to paste your YAML in here. So we're going to use that to create this namespace. Get this copied.
I love that we can draft with Copilot all our YAML.
Yeah. So we've built our namespace there, and now services. I'll apply another YAML here.
We've got a couple more questions. Oh, the joy of, yeah, well, you got a space somewhere.
Oh, I didn't get it all copied. That's why. I was like, I just did this 2 seconds ago.
It's because you're doing it live. That's what it is.
There we go. All right, so I've got my website here. I've got my, it's pulling from the networking that I set up previously within the Kubernetes cluster. So got my external IP. Just to show here, I'm on my work laptop. I'm not in any of the lab environment. Can't get to the website. So come over here.
You're sharing, I think you're sharing the browser window, not your screen.
Oh, good call. Go back to that.
And then once we show this, we've got a couple questions as well.
Share entire screen. All right. So now I am on a machine that's in the Azure Local network. pulls up.
We should have upped the resources on this thing.
I know.
What are you going to do? That's all right. We get to see the experience.
40. And here's our web page that we just created with Kubernetes. So
there we go.
Obviously, so much more that you can do with this. If you're a huge Kubernetes fan, by all means, would love to hear what you're doing with it. Maybe some ways that we could help with getting that on Azure Local.
Perfect. Okay, question time.
Yep.
So the first one, okay, let me see if I'm reading this right. A client with heavy cloud-based O365 SharePoint storage workflows, which can be knowledge worker latency sensitive, are SharePoint/Teams supported on Azure Local?
So
I don't think really in any different fashion than they would be supported for any on-prem workload, right? Like their cloud services. I don't know that you're going to run those locally.
There is, I haven't seen any adoption of it yet. This ultimately came from, my opinion, the EU, but there is Microsoft 365 Local that you guys probably have seen out there. You'll see some things where it's sovereign M365. What that is being able to have even more of the management plane on your network. It's locally. One big thing, so you can run Exchange, you can run SharePoint, you can have all those things where when you log in, similar to how we're in Azure, I'm logging in, but managing the VM, but it's all local. Very similarly, you're logging into Exchange, you're logging into SharePoint, even though it looks like it's SharePoint Online, all that storage is local. Some things that would come up quickly is the nice parts about Exchange Online and SharePoint is you do get so much storage already, and it's already there. Making sure you understand if we bring that back down local, that's a lot of storage that we might have to make sure we're keeping conscious of. The last part of that with Teams is not available. Sorry, I'm chuckling because it's what everybody hates. Their way of doing that is if you need that kind of communication locally with chat, it's back to Skype. They have, as much as we all thought it was dead, Skype for Business would be the play if you needed that local. So
this is why we tag team these, because Ryan is way up on this stuff. There's so many announcements. This is one that slipped by me, so I appreciate it, Ryan. All right, next question. Is Azure Local a limitation if running legacy operating systems in an environment, or is it the same scenario as it would be on-prem, right? We talk manufacturing. I think they're well known for having kind of legacy OSs out there. What's your take on that?
So today, I would say I'm not 100% sure on support or not supported. The oldest OS I've seen on Azure Local is 2016. As you can imagine, if you've got that custom image for something older, be worth testing out, seeing how that works. Some of the tests there too could be if you can get it to work in Azure, it's probably going to work on Azure Local. Whether it's on Prem hardware or in Azure Local, it's the support part there, older VMs, is not going to be there wherever it's running. So it's worth a shot. If you can get it working on Hyper-V, it's probably going to work on Azure Local. But just remember, it'll be a custom image that you're having to upload, and I'd be just cautious of something that is production needed and update comes out for Azure Local and potentially could kill that. You could run it. It would just be something where it's on one host, nothing else is touching it. Just making sure that we don't have any outages or things like that.
Perfect. Okay. That's all we've got for now. I think kind of the final thing you're prepared to show AVD, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll kind of do that as the last. Those tend to be the three big ones that are conversations I'm a part of, are just general VMs, Kubernetes with AKS, and then AVD. This is a popular one.
Yeah, and I'll touch on this real quick. Just wanted to show here. So within Hyper-V, these are my two physical hosts, and you can see here the VMs that we built in Azure showing up right here. So the one that we had just created, be able to console on and see that there. And then when it comes to some of the maintenance or just understanding how the high availability is working, that's with the failover cluster manager. So you're going to be able to see the different VMs, what hosts they're on, the different nodes that we have, and the networks that we have there as well. So just wanted to make sure to call out that piece. Doesn't all have to be within Azure if you like to get your hands a little bit more on it. Okay, back here. Everybody can see now. So I've got AVD, and this is just through Azure so far. Nothing's technically touching our cluster. So for the test here, I went ahead and created my host pool. I created my workspace here and the application group. So then from here, I've got a session host that is already created. I'll show that connection there, but just wanted to show if you were going to go create a new session host. Microsoft doesn't recommend, but it's not best practice, but you could have AVD with some machines on Azure Local and some machines in Azure. Little bit kind of some issues there that I don't have time necessarily get into, but just in my opinion would be creating just a separate application group there for those pieces. So similar to if you've worked with AVD before, being able to have that name prefix, we've got a resource group and Azure Virtual Machine. We're going to do Azure Local Virtual Machine. We've got our custom location and then our image here. Security type, number of processors, very similar, or number of VMs, how many processors, yes. Memory type, again, that thick provision, how much memory, that's a lot of blocks. Network, again, you can build as many different networks as you were to need in your environment, but once they're already built, we can select here. One thing else to call out on this, you might have seen recently that AVD now supports Entra join session hosts. Unfortunately, Azure Local isn't quite there yet, so they would have to be joined into Active Directory. I tried working around it. You can build a VM and then add it as a session host, but didn't quite like that. Similarly before, we can specify the domain or specify the OU unit or just leave it as is. And then the local user.
Oh. Like Diane got disconnected, and unless she rejoins, our session will end soon. That would be inconvenient.
Uh-oh.
If the session does end, this will be the first time that's ever happened. Hopefully, you've been able to get a sense of the capabilities of Azure Local. We would love to have follow-up conversations, answer any additional questions you may have specific to your use cases. So We're going to operate as if, we've got time, but I don't know if Diane's having technical and GoToMeeting didn't auto kick one of us over. So
I already had one built. So just showing this functionality here, being able to connect.
okay. And as that's spinning up, so the session hosts, these are all running Azure Local.
Correct. Yep. So this user here, they logged in through the web interface, but this VM would be running locally on your Azure Local boxes.
Perfect.
It'll eventually go and kind of probably
resource restraint of
yep.
local box.
Yeah.
We do have one question. We'll try and get it answered while that's popping up. Heard you mention VME. Ryan, do you know, does HPE Morpheus HCI work with this?
That's
actually
I don't think Morpheus does yet. Obviously Azure, but I haven't seen anything officially. They come out with updates so quickly that I very well could be wrong on that aspect, but
I know VME would be a competitor to this, right?
Well, I think their question is Morpheus Enterprise. So Morpheus being able to manage VME, Azure, GCP, AWS.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no, I hope everyone has been able to take away something from the demo. I mean, you saw the tool very much in action. Ryan, we'd mentioned we're going to do this. Walk through the solutions site you've got up here, just so people know where they can go start looking for supported hardware.
Yeah, so Microsoft has their Azure Local catalog. Within you here, kind of what we talked about before, you can filter by Premier solutions or just integrated solutions. And then from there, you can sort by if it's going to be something needing to support disaggregated or just hyper-converged. If you need to filter by the actual vendor that you're working with. One thing just call out here with even HPE. So up until a few months ago, everything here was just integrated solution with two of these. The 145 was just a validated solution. Now everything is moved to Premier. So just calling out that all these vendors are really pushing their goal with Azure Local is to have everything be Premier solution. You can just kind of help things go along there.
Perfect. Side note, I did just get a message from Ryan Morgan, another solution architect on our team. There is a Morpheus Enterprise extension for Azure Local now. This is how fast this stuff changes. So,
yep, we call him the better Ryan.
I like you.
One other big piece just to call out when it comes to if you're doing hyper-converged and you're on a Premier or even an integrated solution, there are some network requirements. Due to how it's going to push down for that storage network, it's going to be able to, you're creating that virtual network in Azure to be able to make sure that's getting pushed to the switches and understand. Depending on your vendor, so obviously a common one here would be Cisco. You're basically limited here of your at a minimum needing one of their 9300 models. Same thing, Aruba is going to have their list as well, but just wanted to make sure that called out. I know I feel like that gets missed a lot when people are like, oh, I really want to go test out Azure Local and understand it. Is depending on what your networking equipment looks like today, sometimes that can be a roadblock. Perfect. And then lastly, they do, if you're thinking about something, you can use their sizer. I've actually had a lot of luck using this and getting good data back, but being able to just understand what kind of workloads that you're looking for and what your solution might need to look like. Happy to have those conversations if need be, but just want to make sure everybody's aware of it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think we are pushing up on our time. Been a lot of great questions. Again, I hope that you were able to maybe learn something, see Azure Local for the first time. That the hour was helpful. Ryan, huge shout out to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to put the demos together. If anyone has any suggestions for what they would like to see next, do not hesitate to reach out and let us know. That's how Azure Local popped up. There was a lot of interest that we were seeing from people that attend these. And so, again, we want to thank you. We hope you join us next month, and don't hesitate to reach out. So
thanks, everybody. Yeah, enjoy it. We'll see you.